it's creation, as women, we are creators. That's, part of our DNA, how we're biologically made. And farming is creation.
That was Erica Lavdanski with B&H Organic Produce. Hi, I'm Stephanie Spiker.
And I'm Candace Wierzbowski.
And this is The Farmhouse. Erica is an organic produce farmer from Morgantown, Pennsylvania. So, Candace, what are your thoughts on organic food?
Organic food to me is one of those things that would be really nice to have, but doesn't always seem particularly accessible. Sometimes I look at the price points and I think, what is really the difference between this banana and that banana other than 50 cents a pound? So I'm looking forward to getting some clarity on that and maybe hearing why it's worth throwing out those 50 cents for organic produce.
Yeah, well, hopefully Erica can maybe shed some light on that, because I feel like a lot of people probably have a similar thought process.
Yeah, it's important to know because I think everyone's really trying to stretch a dollar these days. So it's important to know where your money is going and if it's worth going there.
Well, let's get into it and talk to Erica and see her thoughts on everything. And make sure you guys stick around after the interview, because we have a little tease for something coming up that we're going to be doing on the website at lancasterfarming.com. Erica Lavdanski, welcome to the farmhouse. It is great to have you.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
So we always start everyone off with the same question. Did you always want to work in agriculture?
No, I actually didn't know it was an option until I was maybe in my late teens, and I met someone locally who was doing it, and I thought, wow, you can do that as a job. And then from there, I pursued it.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about your farm, B&H Organic Produce. I read on your website that you started officially in 2008, and it was only a 1/8 of an acre, which sounds really tiny in terms of like farming and agriculture. So, what has changed since it started in 2008, and like how much has it grown since that initial 1/8 of an acre?
So actually, we started with an 1/8 of an acre, and I think the next year we doubled that and then tripled it. And maybe 4 years in, we were up to 9 acres. And that only lasted 2 years before I burned out pretty much. And then now the last 4 years, we have been steady at about 3 acres. And we have 2 hoop houses and a greenhouse.
And you grow like a lot of variety of produce, I believe?
Yeah, but salad greens are our main business.
So why did you decide to go with an organic operation?
There was never a different option. I was really interested in natural foods and organic living from the beginning. And I had a really great partnership with the owner of the farm, which we could talk about if you wanted. That's pretty interesting. And he was one of the first organic farmers in the state of Pennsylvania that was certified. And he had been part of the organic movement for a really long time. And I met him and was very inspired by knowing an organic farmer. And so we went from there.
Yeah, we have in our notes, you're talking about Paul, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I think we're gonna get to Paul because we definitely have questions about you guys.
Yeah.
Yes, we'll definitely get into that a little more and your partnership and how everything started. But for now, back to kind of the more organic side of things. Working here at Lancaster Farming, I've gotten to meet a lot of different farmers, and a lot of them, that I've met, they use organic practices, but they are not USDA certified organic for whatever reason, whether they think the process is too long or too costly, or who even knows, So for you, why was, going and being certified organic important? And do you think there are benefits to the certification? Are there any drawbacks to the certification?
I'm really glad you asked, because I am really a proud organic farmer and a certified organic farmer. I'm not putting anyone else down for how they decide to either farm or label or certify their farm. But for me, it's extremely important, and it's something I'm very proud of to be a part of that movement. I remember when the USDA was first just like thinking about taking over organic practices, I got involved, and I was like, getting people to sign petitions. I've always been very interested in the idea of organics because being certified, whether locally or by the USDA, it's really a way of having food security and having a place where there are standards to keep other practices out. And I was not a big fan of the USDA taking over, but in the end, I'm glad now that they have, because that's a huge lobbying organization in Washington. And that's a big reason why we stay certified, because it doesn't change how we grow anything, but it's about having a say in how the food is grown in our country and what's available to consumers and the choices we have. And regardless of how you feel about GMOs, if they're too widespread and taking over, we need a way to have a different option, to keep a place where food is safe from those things, and or there's an option other than GMOs. And I think that being part of this certification process, we are putting money into a lobbying organization in Washington to be able to keep an option for food and food security. And that's really important to me. I'm not saying organics is perfect or any of that. It's about, I've always believed in putting your money where your beliefs are and where your morals are and what you feel passionate about. So that's why I'm like very proud to be a certified organic farmer.
I think it's interesting that you brought up, the importance of like being able to invest financially in what you believe in, because it kind of leads me into my next question, which is one from the consumer side of things. And that is, there is a difference in price between organic goods and non-organic goods. And so I was wondering, like, what would you say to people who might see the sticker price of organic produce and think, well, I could get these tomatoes cheaper if I don't buy organic? Like, what makes it worth spending that extra money? And I know not everyone is going to be swayed by that kind of argument, but for people who might be on the fence.
Well, I think it's there's probably a bunch of reasons, but one is like, you get what you pay for. It doesn't always mean that organic products have more nutrition than non-organic products. I think local produce will have more nutrition than, things that aren't local. That's kind of a fact. But again, it's like supporting what matters to you and being really sure that we have a choice in how our food is grown in our country, our community, is really important. And if you're buying organic products, you're doing the same thing like we are about being certified, where you're supporting an organization that keeps our food safe and gives us another option. I'm not sure what the statistic is now, but what was like 89% of our corn and soybeans was genetically modified. That's a lot, and that's all run by big agribusiness. And, once the big businesses are taking over, that's less choice for the consumer. So I think, yes, it's more expensive. I could go into all the reasons why it should be more expensive, and food in general should be more expensive. To grow something organically is way harder. And so that's why it's more expensive. It's not just a inflation of the price. It's necessary. And it actually costs a lot more to grow food in general, conventional or organic, than we pay in the grocery store as consumers. And somebody has to work to do that work, and farmers deserve to be paid well as anyone else.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I think going along with that, You said in a previous interview with Lancaster Farming that, farming and being able to live comfortably from a financial perspective are often at odds with each other, and that in order for things to improve, people need to be willing to talk about it more. And I was just wondering if, you see things changing in that regard for better or worse, or how do you think that has been going in the last, 5 years, decade or so?
I think, if I'm correct, looking at the dates when that article was published, I believe that interview was back in 2012, which is already over 10 years ago.
I can't believe that.
Me either. It makes me feel so old. Wait, what was the question again? Sorry.
No, it's fine. Just you kind of just said like it's really hard to like farm for a living and also be able to live comfortably from a financial point of view, just because like you said, what we're paying in the grocery store isn't really covering the cost of growing a lot of those items.
So since that was published 10 years ago till now, is it kind of, are we still in the same boat? Are you still feeling that same way about farming in general?
Yeah. At that time, I was probably, so that was 2012. So I would have only been in business for 4 years, but probably up until 3 years ago, I had a second job, just like a little part-time gig. But up until then, always had a second job, which is crazy when you're already working, 60 hours a week. And so I no longer have to do that. But
congrats, that's a big deal.
Yeah, but we make like we're like on the poverty line. Like we could apply for food stamps, which is really crazy. Obviously we don't need to because we have plenty of food, which is awesome. But we bought our house. We live in town. I don't live on the farm. I don't own a farm. We bought our house in 2006 and we thought, oh, we'll be here for like 6 years and then we'll buy a farm. And so it's been like 17 years and we're still in the same house and so I'm a farmer without a farm. And that's really hard. It's hard to swallow. And farmers who own a farm, they have to pay a mortgage and it's crazy. And I don't think that people understand. Like they're always like, oh, it's a lot of hard work. But I don't think they really understand that it's a lot of hard work, but there's also not a lot of financial return. It's a lifestyle and I like the lifestyle and that's why I continue doing it. But it's not a great economic benefit. When I hear young people wanting to get involved, I'm like, I wouldn't do it, which is really sad because we think the average age of the farmer is so much older now.
It's in the 50s, right? Mid-50s?
58 or 57, something in that range.
Yeah. And it's like, how do you want young people to get into this to grow your food if it's not economically feasible? It's crazy. And that's the other thing. It's like people will constantly say like, oh, your carrots cost this much. I can get them here for so much cheaper. And that's, my husband and I talked about today, like our prices of certification have gone up, our soil, our pots, like all of our inputs have greatly increased in the last 2 years, greatly increased. And we've barely been able to raise our prices because we don't dictate the price of our vegetables. That price is dictated by large grocery stores. They set the price on produce, and then we have to follow along with that to be competitive, not even competitive, but to sell our produce because we have to, customers can compare prices, but that's not actually what it costs to grow the food.
Right.
I think that's the part that people don't understand, that like we're not actually being like, okay, we put this much labor, this is the cost of seed, this is the cost of soil, this is the cost of tractor repairs, and then, harvesting and processing, and then here's the price of your bag of spinach. That's not how it works. We just have to look at what everyone else is doing and try to get the best price we can. But it's like a terrible business model, but it's how all the farmers are doing it.
Yeah, it does sound extremely frustrating because, like you were saying, you've been in that house so much longer than you imagined. And it's not like you have spent your days sitting around in that house. You've been working extremely hard. So to not have any forward momentum, or at least not feeling like you have any, I can imagine would be very
Yeah.
frustrating to have to deal with.
Financially, we've had forward momentum in other ways, and there's other things that have grown and flourished and become beautiful, but financially, it's not a great thing set up.
Well, we can circle back to talking about Paul,
Okay.
Paul Hartz. So do you want to tell us about Paul and your relationship with him and that whole story?
Yeah. So if anyone knows Paul who's listening, he still is alive. And although he's old, he's 93,
Oh, wow.
and he's pretty tired and he doesn't get out of the house much, but his memory is way better than mine. And he is still sharp as he ever was and hilarious. So I met Paul when I was just coming out of high school. He had his farm, his organic farm. He had a little health food store on the farm. And I worked for him in the health food store, and I was very inspired by him. And although he is like 40 years older than I am, we became best friends. And we've been friends since 1999. But I traveled around after I left working for him and worked for other farms because I wanted to get experience. And then I came back and we started B&H together on his land.
Mm-hmm.
And he was a mentor. He taught me how to run tractors, fix tractors. He did most of the fixing, but he taught me a lot. And just a lot about, the integrity of the soil. And it's really like a treasured experience that I got to have with him. It's really nice.
It's a very cool story, like
Yeah.
an origin
Yeah.
story.
Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely bizarre. So I have a lease now on his land, on his farm, and I have a lease there to grow produce.
Does he have any family that are interested in farming, or are you kind of like, I don't know if it's like too much to say like his like kind of surrogate daughter, but
Yeah.
that he's kind of passing along all the knowledge and, you're now working on his land. Is that the kind of relationship you would say you might have, or?
He does have children. His son is a farmer and is now on the land raising beef and certified organic hay. And he has 7 children in total, and they're all around. His son and grandson will inherit and take over the farm, and they let me make a mess there in the meantime. I think I was just the most interested to listen to Paul. Sometimes it's hard to take things from your parents, So I think I just stayed around and listened more than they did. But they're great. We all have a great relationship. It's a really nice thing.
Sounds like you've just become a member of the family, which is nice.
Yeah, whether his kids like that or not, it's all good now. Yeah. Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to ask you about is your CSA share program. I saw on your website that you do like 2 different options where you as the farmer kind of create the shares and just like, people get whatever they get. And then you have like a kind of create your own where people can kind of pick and choose what they want to get. And I feel like I don't actually have a CSA share anywhere, even though I think about it all the time of getting one. But I feel like most places it is kind of you get what you get. So what made you kind of choose to have those options and let people pick out what they want?
Before I started B&H, I worked for a farm that had that model, and I ran the whole ordering system inside of it. And so I already had experience when I started B&H. I just felt like there's so many options for CSAs, and there's so many CSA hoppers. People move from one CSA to the other. And I just felt like it was a way to like try to please the customer. And also like, you don't want to be giving people things they don't want and then they're unhappy. So I don't know, might as well just let them choose. It is way more work. And I don't think that we are, getting extra money for the extra work. But at the same time, then when 2020 happened and the pandemic, for us to be able to keep working through the pandemic, we had to create an online store. And so where people could order. And I knew once I started that, I'd never be able to get rid of it. So anyone can order from our online store every week. But then for our CSA members, we just allow them to use that because it's already set up. But we give them like discounts through the online store in exchange for them giving us money up front so that we can, buy our inputs in the beginning of the season. So that's how it works. I think the customers like it. It's a little more work than I'd like to do and a little more complicated, but I do have these core members that have been with us almost from the beginning, and it's something they like, so we keep it for them.
I mean, yeah, I guess part of being a business that works directly with customers is you sometimes have to do things that maybe is not your favorite thing, but is something that keeps people coming back.
Yes, yeah, I mean, we have to be business people too. That's super important. If we don't have the customers, then it's not worth doing anything. And having CSA is really important for us because again, it's giving us money in a time of year where we're not bringing in a lot of crops. It also creates such a good community and good relationships. Like just on a side note, like I had a big computer problem yesterday and I called one of my CSA members and he like helps me out. It's like really nice because there's like a good relationship there with people.
Yeah.
Which feels nice. Yeah.
Truly a community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So we saw on your website that you serve 2 restaurants in Reading. I actually live in the Reading area.
Oh.
I was curious which restaurants you guys serve.
Mm-hmm. So we do Sweet Streets Cafe, and
Nice.
that's in the like Albright neighborhood. I'm not sure what part.
I eat there on my birthday almost every year. I love their salads. They're so good. So when I have a salad, is that greens from your farm maybe?
Quite possibly because we sell them a lot. But I will say that they buy from a lot of other farmers too. And I'm not saying that's a really good thing. Like when they say they're doing farm to table or using local ingredients, they really are. They're not pretending. They are so supportive and generous with us that I can't thank them enough.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. I'm going to go even more now.
Yeah, and other farmers too, like they really are the real deal for sure. We also sell to Building 24. It's in Wyomissing.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I'm familiar with that.
We've been selling to them for a couple years, which is a really nice relationship. And I also can plug Cafe Esperanza. So we donate to them. It's a little cafe in the city, and it's a pay what you can cafe, and it's an amazing resource in the community. They feed kids on the way to school every morning, and they'll kind of take all of our extras, and if they can't sell it, they take it to like a community library that has a refrigerator and disperses it to the community. So that's a great resource for us too, because you always have too many cucumbers, so they help us to distribute that in the community.
That's awesome. Yeah, I've never heard of that place, but I'll have to look it up.
Yeah.
So with like getting food into local restaurants, what was kind of the process? How did you get started with connecting with these places? And do you have any tips if there are farmers listening who are like, yeah, I would love to have my food sold at local restaurants?
Ugh, I've had a lot of bad experiences.
Oh, no.
I don't know. I don't want to I understand because I worked in restaurants for a long time that it's really hard because their margins are really small, like ours. But a lot of the restaurants want to say they buy local produce, but it's just not cost effective for them. So I definitely recommend if a farmer is trying to do that, you kind of really set up your terms ahead of time. Like, when you're getting paid, how you're getting paid, if they are actually committing to you growing crops for them, or they just say they want it and then they don't order it when it's ready. Really being clear about all that stuff is really important because I find that especially in the spring, all the chefs are calling you. They're so excited. And then come June, when you have too much stuff or you want to sell it, they kind of have balked at the price and then don't want to continue. So we're lucky that we have those two steady restaurants that treat us really well. We have to create that relationship with the restaurant. The other problem is you can have a good relationship with a restaurant and then they change chefs and then your chef's gone and the new chef's not ordering anything. So it's not my favorite business model at all. We've had some pretty bad experiences, but just find, restaurants and chefs that are willing to pay and are willing to stick with it. I mean, and don't settle. Don't, because they'll push you around a little.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going to kind of jump backwards / forwards a little bit. So back in the previous interview we talked about that you did with Lancaster Farming in 2012, there was a point you said at the end of the article that really stuck out to me and really fits in with like kind of the overall theme and a lot of things that have come up with our podcast here at the farmhouse. So you said that, and this was back in 2012, when you would go and work at the farmer's market, a lot of people would assume your husband, who at the time was not actually working at the farm, was the farmer. And so now, over 10 years later, is that still a challenge that you face, and how do you deal with it?
It's not. And I thought that was really interesting because I heard that in your little trailer for the podcast. It has really changed over the years. And it's not a thing anymore at the markets. The other thing that was really hard for me being in Lancaster County growing was that a lot of my suppliers were in the Plain community, the Amish or Mennonite, and they often wouldn't deal with me. They would want to deal with Paul, who didn't even grow the produce, who wasn't hands-on, or they would want to deal with my husband. Like they talked to him all day, but he didn't know anything. But that's changed as well. I would say it's not as much of an issue. But when I began, for sure, at markets, but also in the community, like when you go to produce grower meetings or when you try to buy local fertilizers or supplies, it was for sure an issue. But I don't find it to be a problem anymore.
That's kind of exciting, though, that over the years it's become much more normalized that, hey, women are farmers too, and you're going to see them doing their thing and working.
Yeah, I think it is, especially at market, because there's a lot of women growers now. Maybe not a lot, but there's a lot of women at the market selling. Yeah, I think it is more normalized. In the beginning, I was like, especially in our West Riding market in Berks County, it was definitely a new thing there. But yeah, I think it's for sure. We women are making our mark, so it's kind of exciting.
Yes, I love that.
That's awesome. So that kind of brings us to the end of our questions, but we do have one last kind of big one for you. And that is, what does being a woman in ag mean to you?
It's creation, as women, we are creators. That's, part of our DNA, how we're biologically made. And farming is creation. It's about you're constantly creating new things, growth, you're planting seeds, you're harvesting, but it's also like the way you plant your crops. It's a very creative process from the beginning to the end. And that's why I keep doing it, because it's so fun and it's always that challenge. And also then too, you're nurturing people, you're nurturing your community, your friends, your family. And I've really learned in the last couple of years, like we were talking about how the economics isn't great, but I've really spent a lot of focus on our workers and the people who come and work with us and volunteer with us, and really nurturing and creating a safe, healthy, positive work environment for them. And that's been like so rewarding for me and so positive. And I think that's also like another space of creating health and community, but also like nurturing. And I think that really allows my feminine energy to come out It's really nice.
It's a great answer to that
Yeah,
question.
I love that.
Yeah.
Erica Lavdanski, thank you so much for joining us at the farmhouse today. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thanks. This was a really fun conversation. I appreciate it.
Wow. We're only 2 guests in, and I feel like we just set the bar really high for answers to that last question. I'm super impressed that she was able to come up with that right off the cuff.
Yeah, honestly, it was poetic. I feel like there might be a listener or two that gets a tear in their eye listening to that.
Mm-hmm. She really stressed how difficult farming can be, but I feel like she really turned it around with her answer to that question. And, I feel like for as many reasons as there might be to not get into farming, I feel like reasons to get into farming are right there within her answer.
Right, like despite the fact that it is a financial struggle, she seems to really love what she does, and I think she has some pretty loyal customers too, so that's exciting.
Speaking of her CSA, I know that when we spoke about this going into this interview, you had some thoughts about CSAs and how you'd like to join one, but you've kind of held back. Is there a reason that you've never joined one?
Yeah, I do think it would be super cool to get a CSA share from a local farm, but a lot of times they're big, which is great, except I'm only one person and produce goes bad really fast. So I don't know, listeners, if you know of farms that do like single serve CSA, hit me up. I would love to know.
Yeah, I've never really explored a CSA option, mainly because 50% of my family are all really picky eaters, and that includes me. And so I've always been worried about getting, a box of produce that is going to go uneaten because half the family doesn't like whatever is in there. So I do like the idea of getting to choose your own. I know it's a lot of extra work for them, but I feel like that makes it a little bit more accessible for a family like mine, where, chard is not something that's going to go over well at my dinner table. But if they have asparagus, we cook that all the time, so double the asparagus.
Nice. So we teased at the beginning a little announcement-ish type thing that we're going to do. So I don't know if anyone listening has ever heard of the Fox reality TV show Farmer Wants a Wife. Candace and I certainly have heard of it because last year for season 1, we, along with a couple other ladies here at Lancaster Farming, watched every single episode and did reactions to them on our website at lancasterfarming.com. And Candace, what are we doing this year?
We're going to do it again because we had a grand old time last year. It was the first time in decades that I had watched any kind of reality dating show, and I was flummoxed at times by why anyone would do this to themselves. But it was really entertaining, and it was a lot of fun doing it with the rest of the ladies here at Lancaster Farming. And so I think we're all looking forward to doing that again in the late winter, early spring, however long the season goes.
Yeah, so season 2 premieres on Fox on February 1st. So keep an eye out on lancasterfarming.com on February 2nd to read all of our thoughts about it. And we will probably also give a little bit of the gossip and the juice and all of that good stuff, or the tea as the kids call it, here at the farmhouse. We'll also probably have a little fun and talk about it here a little bit every so often. So tune in, watch the show with us, and, send us your thoughts.
We might have something even earlier than that because they've already published the farmers that are participating and some bios, and boy, do we have some thoughts
We
what's coming.
Already have things to say. So, and maybe, hopefully, fingers crossed, we'll even get to talk to some of the ladies from the show on this podcast as well. So we'll see where it goes.
All right. Second episode in the bag.
Second episode in the bag. Thank you all so much for listening. We really appreciate it. And we'll catch you guys later. I'm Stephanie.
And I'm Candace.
And we will see you next time at the farmhouse.
Bye.
This episode is copyright 2024 by Lancaster Farming newspaper, part of the Steinman Communications family. Today's show was written by Candace Wierzbowski and Stephanie Spiker and produced by terrible typer Eric Herlock. And the music you hear is courtesy of Tinbird Shadow.